Welcome to Upside Down Mirror, one woman's true story of a twin flame journey, a reflection of true love, true hate, and everything between, where everything and nothing matters at the same time. Paradigms shatter as mirrors of shadows cut through indestructible layers, testing the sands of time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of Upside Down Mirror. After we left the cabin, I felt absolutely fabulous. Doing the movements, doing the ayahuasca, being with my husband and doing Tantra. Overall, it was a tremendous healing experience. But now we are back in the real world, the world of COVID. I learned from doing a ton of ayahuasca ceremonies that the reason that people get sick is because the illness attaches to their shadow energies. Because illness is low frequency, it can only attach to areas of you that are low frequency. So if you did frequency work all of the time, if you were doing this type of work all the time, spiritual work and healing work, and you're raising your frequency, the stagnant and low frequency energy of illness would not be able to attach to you. So the best thing to do is really work on getting in your heart space and work on your frequency and work on healing to prevent yourself from getting sick. However, if you were to get sick, it is a perfect time to focus on purging shadow energies. So, if I personally get sick, I always go into, okay, what am I holding on to? What is this illness about? What do I need to release to let the illness release? So I wasn't scared of COVID like a lot of people were. I spent a lot of time walking the dogs in the sun and being in nature. I got vitamin D shots and zinc. So I really felt like between everything I was doing, that I was protected and teaching my family to do the same things as well. I was extremely fortunate because I had created Awake, the Academy of Wealth, Alchemy, and Kinetic Energy, way before COVID hit. But after COVID hit, it really took off because people were looking for online classes, and that became a very popular thing to do. So we decided to start with acting on our manifestation that we did during the sex magic. It's very important that when you manifest that you actually do put stuff into action as well. The universe will show up for you miraculously, but you have to take the focus and action to do something about it as well. So we started looking for land at Deep Creek Lake where we got married like we had planned. That weekend, just a couple days after we decided to put this in action, and about a week after we got back from the cabin, we actually put a contract on land that we found. It was absolutely perfect for us. It was lakefront, it had a dock with it, it had state land around it, so there was no other house directly right next to us. We had our space. It was beautiful. So we knew right away, this is where we want to live. The owner accepted our offer and we started preparing to build. Also, because COVID hit right when we were supposed to go on our honeymoon to Costa Rica, the honeymoon was postponed until Costa Rica was allowing people to fly into their country. For the most part, I woke up every day thinking about how lucky I was. I woke up in gratitude, very excited about my life. Sean and I were working on our relationship, doing Tantra, talking, The kissing was definitely not where it needed to be still, but I could tell he wanted it to be. And I could tell also that this was way more than just kissing. As he became more and more attached to me, it was harder to allow his heart to open because he was getting vulnerable and he was struggling with this. And I can step back and look at that definitely in perspective now, but when you're going through it, your own insecurities can play. And then, I just remember getting kind of upset about it. Some of the things that played out, for instance, were, he would make these amazing dinners because he lived in Italy for 6 years, and he would cook Italian food, and he would make these amazing Italian dinners for us. And we'd be sitting at the dinner table, and he would pull out his phone and just be on his phone for a lot of the dinner. And I remember at first thinking, I don't want to be a bitch and complain, but that was starting to really get on my nerves. And I remember saying something to him about it. And then he started to put his phone away. But what I started to notice was he wanted to be on his phone all of the time. The reason he wasn't was because he was scared that he was going to get in trouble by me. And that doesn't feel right. Some of the other things that I noticed were I would go to bed at night, and it was like he would purposely stay up and read or play guitar or do something to come to bed later than me. And I remember during that time I felt really lonely. So I told him, I said, I think going to bed together as a couple is extremely important because it's your talk time, it's your bonding time. But it seems like to me that you really want me to be asleep when you go to bed. And during the day, I was always creating different things. So my day, I was in my office creating, which I loved doing. But, we didn't spend a tremendous amount of time talking during the day because we each were doing creative projects. During this time as well, still at the beginning stages of COVID, where everybody was trying to decide what the rules were, we had decided to take salsa lessons together. I think this is important to note for what I have to say in a future podcast. Sean lived in Italy for 6 years, like I said, so he already knew how to salsa dance. He actually really, really loved salsa dancing. It was a passion of his. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to take lessons and to have us do it together because I wanted to be his salsa partner. I took some salsa lessons individually, and I told her I really want to be the one that dances with my husband. And I expected that when he came with me, we would practice together. I expected a whole different scenario than what happened. It was actually quite chaotic. He came, he seemed very disinterested, and this is a man who loves salsa dancing, and he has a wife that wants to salsa dance with him and is taking lessons to do so. I thought, okay, he's going to love this. And I could dance with the instructor, but I absolutely could not dance with him. And then I remember asking him to come back, so we could work through it. And he said, no, you go by yourself. And that was another big, huge disappointment. And now looking back on it, I see it as what it was resistance against attaching. But at the time, I just felt like, okay, he doesn't really love me that much. He doesn't want to be with me. During this time, I was doing natural plant medicine ceremonies with the Awake students, and Willow and Sean would come with me because I wanted us to, do this as a family. A magical ceremony that I did was one in Kentucky with two of the students that had graduated from Awake and had actually excelled so much that they were helping me with the academy. We got to know each other. They each brought their husbands. So it was three girls and our husbands at this beautiful Airbnb in Kentucky, for a healing weekend. And of course, we had Willow there, and Willow just did very well in that environment. She absolutely loved doing these ayahuasca ceremonies because we would dance. She would tune in very fast and help us heal. She would speak star. So it was an amazing situation. It was like the dream job. It was just absolutely perfect. But then what I did notice about Sean was that he would be very distant during these times when I would get together with people and do these ayahuasca ceremonies. And what I really wanted And what my guardian parents had said was I needed a partner to work with. I wanted my divine masculine to work with so that we could open the divine masculine and feminine portals during these ceremonies and heal people. But it was our responsibility to have that divine connection together so that we could open up these healing portals. And what I was seeing was I was seeing my husband not really wanting to be there, on his phone and running away from these magical events that we were doing. When we were in Kentucky, for example, there was this absolutely gorgeous moon, and we were all sitting around in a circle doing healing on one another. And we had decided to go out and look at the stars and the moon, and he was doing his own thing. Sean was doing his own thing in another room, and I was sitting there with two girls and their husbands and playing with Willow. One of the girls that was with me said to Willow, "Go get your dad. He has to come out and see this beautiful moon." And Willow went and got him and brought him to the door. And she said, "Daddy, come out and look at the moon." And he said, no. And I was like, "Sean, come out." And he was like, no. He absolutely refused to come out and look at the moon and stars with me. Once again, that was another, like, my heart just sunk. I was like, what is happening? What's going on? So, of course I went and asked him, I was like, why is it that you're not with us right now? And he's like, I just don't want to be around people who are doing that, which we did not seem out of it. With ayahuasca, you are not inebriated. However, later I really did find out what was going on, but it would take a while for me to do so. During this time in Kentucky, we had such amazing, profound healings, magical, life-changing healings we were doing on one another, and he was in a separate room and didn't see what was right in front of his face, and then I would have to go and explain it to him, but I felt so disconnected and even a little envious of the other two girls and their husbands were being a part of this. As much as I loved my husband dearly, I was starting to have doubts at this point. Of course, Willow steps in always at the right time. So during the last night in Kentucky, Sean was sleeping, and he said he was having a dream where he had all these politicians on his back, and he had these keys to get into this garage, and he couldn't get in. The politicians wouldn't go off his back until he could find the right key to get into the garage. And he says he remembers trying all these keys, but he couldn't open this garage door. He woke up and Willow was staring at him, and she said, "Daddy, where are your keys?" And he's the one that came out and told me, "Rebecca, that was absolutely insane. I didn't talk in my sleep. She was staring at me and she was reading my dream." So once again, he started loosening up and he started remembering and realizing that, hey, this stuff is real. We drove home from Kentucky in really good spirits. Once again, there were some things I was unhappy about. For the most part, I was like, I love this man. And don't get me wrong, he was an amazing husband. Like, he did so much stuff around the house. He loves my daughter. He loves me. It's not like he's doing drugs or drinking or going out and cheating on me. But for the most part, I was thinking, you have a really, really good man. But something was still nagging at me because I knew I was supposed to have my heaven on earth. I was supposed to have a man that I was in love with that was working with me to help the world. And I felt like it was me trying to help the world while he sat in a corner and just looked at on his phone. I was having absolute tremendous success in my career. I was bombarded by students and clients with these miraculous healing testimonies they were giving me, thanking me. It was the best present I could ever have to know that I was finally in a space where I was super passionate about what I was doing, but it was healing the world around me. And part of that was the ayahuasca natural plant medicine ceremonies because of all of the miracles that I was seeing around me. Also, we're in the summertime here, and I'm looking for house designs to build because we're finishing up with a bank. We're getting prepared to get a loan to build the house of our dreams. And I was looking at over 250 house designs until I came across the perfect one, and I would be submitting it to different contractors within the next couple weeks. Also, I would like to mention a really powerful technique that along with the manifestation process I did to get, we did to get the land on the lake. So, of course, we did the sex magic, we did the manifestation. And I remember right before we actually found the land, I was staring at my window. And where I was living, it was a place that I had gotten right after moving from my sister's. And I was literally staring at a brick house right next to me. And I remember thinking, I want to be looking at the lake. Rebecca, do you have any belief systems where you're unable to look at the lake? Why are you looking at a brick house instead of the lake through your window? And then belief systems such as it's going to take time, it's too soon, you're going too fast, it costs too much money, only really, really, really rich people can live on the lake. All of those belief systems started coming up. And just like I did when I was in prison to just create the event of the girl beating me up, I started scrubbing myself, being like, it's a beautiful lake of water. You deserve to look at it just as much as anybody else. You can bring your heaven on earth. In heaven, you're not going to be looking at a brick house when you look out the window. You're going to be looking at beautiful bodies of water. You're bringing your heaven to earth. You can do this just as much as anybody else. You can stand in your power. So that's very powerful to do when you're trying to create whatever in your life alongside the manifestations. I do teach that in Awake as well. So, of course, alongside doing the project of building the house, I was doing Awake and doing ceremonies at the same time for Awake. So we had another Awake ceremony coming up that summer. And remember, the people in Awake, they're not going to be the type of people that are scared to get together because of COVID. Most of the people that are students in Awake, they don't think that way. They think the way I do, like this is just shadow energies. I can make myself impervious of it. So we didn't really have a problem with COVID when we were doing these natural plant medicine ceremonies. The next natural plant medicine ceremony was in this beautiful hangar on a mountain. And it was this retired couple who had, flown before. They had a plane, and then they retired, so they turned the hangar into like a place to get married and a reception area. And for some reason, I got on the Airbnb and I just said, guide me to where we're supposed to go, and I was guided to this place. And then the lady, when I was reserving the Airbnb, she goes, can I ask you why you decided to come here? And I said, well, really, I was just kind of guided here and my guides told me. And she kind of chuckled and she said, this is on the 37th parallel highway where, they often see aliens and different things are happening. She said, I think that the land really needs cleared here. So that might be why you guys are coming. Once again, the ceremony that we had there, was a 2-night ceremony, was absolutely beautiful, transformative. So many healings were happening. We had so much fun. We healed so much. And part of that was us also healing the land around us. It was absolutely beautiful. But that little pang of disappointment lied inside of me because once again, Sean stayed distant from everybody. He wasn't trying to be a part of what was going on. He was just sitting separately, once again, looking on his phone or staying upstairs. Of course, I want Willow to be a part of this. I want her to grow up, being able to facilitate ceremonies because she's doing it at such an early age. So he was there as well to watch her. He would often use her as an excuse, even though she was with us. Willow was so magical, and he was even seeing this more and more. Once again, she knows what's going to happen before it happens. So we're in a situation where we're literally doing ceremony where people have receptions. So it was absolutely decorated, beautiful, the lights. All of a sudden, Willow screams, "Mommy!" And I come running to her, wondering what's going on. And I didn't even notice until later, but we're standing right on the dance floor outside that they had created underneath this crystal light. That's where she was standing. Then she screams, "Daddy!" And then he comes running. And then right then, the most beautiful romantic song came on. And we are right there where the couples would dance if they were to get married there. And then she pushes us together. It was better than our wedding dance. It was so magical. And then I looked at him and I was like, you can't make this shit up. And he smiled and hugged me. So he knew. He was beginning to really see how powerful our little beautiful daughter was. The next day, we did ceremony until around 5 o'clock because we were getting prepared for the sunset and we were getting prepared to leave. And I told everybody, I was like, something is about to come on the horizon. It's extremely important, but it's a reward for what we have done, like a new earth. And I actually have a picture of this, and it is absolutely breathtaking. And you know, pictures don't do things justice, but you can see it in the picture. What came was just miraculous. It was like a whole new earth came forward. You could see it was like the clouds were coming forward, but the clouds turned into castles. They looked like castles in the sky with horses. It looked like heaven was coming forward, and everybody just sat there and stared at it and took pictures because that was absolutely undeniable that we had worked so hard on that land that was our reward coming forward. So I have this magical picture of him and I hugging each other, looking at these castles come forward in the sky that one of the students had taken. And that picture's hanging up in our bedroom right now. And he says to me, he goes, it does remind me that magic and miracles are real. So, you know, he's slowly but surely getting into the place that I want him to get, but he still won't participate in the actual ceremony and see what's going on right in front of his face. So now we take a journey back home, and it's time for me to interview the contractors. It's really interesting because this is part of the manifestation. I wanted a beautiful home, but we had a budget, of course. And so the first few contractors that I showed my house plans to just handed them right back, and they're like, there's just no way that that's happening on your budget. And then finally, out of the blue, this real estate agent calls me and she's like, I have a contractor's name that I think you're going to be interested in. And I was like, okay, I'll give him a call. And I called him. He didn't work directly in the lake. He was like in a neighboring town. So we met for lunch and I gave him the plans. And he was like, yes, I absolutely can do this for the budget that you're asking. And not only that, Sean had given up all of his bands to come in and live with me, you know, for our marriage. And I remember telling him, I really want you to start playing in a band again because I think it's fun. I think you would like it. And he said, well, I would do it like as a substitute. Our contractor looked at us during that lunch date when we were showing him the plans. And he said, I'm the lead singer of a band and my bass player often gets sick. And Sean plays bass. So there we go. Sean actually substituted for his bass player several times. And I'm thinking, wow, the cards are really aligning for us. The universe is really handing things to us on a silver platter at this point. So we were actually having miraculous things happen to us. Like everyday life had magic in it. You know, in this, especially after the heaven came forward, the castles in the sky came forward after that ceremony, you know, we just noticed like really synchronistic magical events that were happening. And even Sean noticed it too. So he was definitely getting more into this way of thinking, but there was still a huge resistance that was eating me alive. And I realized, you know, I have this very successful academy that he didn't seem at all interested in. I remember thinking, if my husband created something so big and beautiful, so lucrative, and so magical where it was healing a ton of people, I would actually want to know what it was all about. I would want to listen to the meditations. I would want to look at the videos. And I realized he hadn't looked at any of my content. He hasn't listened to one meditation. He didn't watch any of the videos. And when I asked him about it, he would just say that I didn't offer it to him, or he would say something, a very surface answer. And I remember saying, well, if it were me, I would just be curious. I'd want to know about what you were doing. And then things got really difficult for me to handle whenever I had a guy that I worked on in an ayahuasca ceremony that completely healed from CTE. And he did an 8-minute testimonial for me talking about this healing. And if you know what CTE is, it's, you get multiple concussions. Football players get it. It actually, some people die of it. They get dementia. They end up having major anger issues, and it's incurable. And he's talking about on this video how, through this ceremony with me, it wasn't me, it was spirit working through me, but that he had this healing. And I was so proud and so happy about this. I actually walked to Sean, and I didn't want to get into a fight. So I said, I really want you to watch this. It's 8 minutes long. So, tell me if you can actually do it, because I didn't want to get into a fight. And he goes, no, I can. And I turned on the testimonial, and probably within 30 seconds, he was walking out the door saying something to the dog. And I just remember my heart just crushed. And I was like, why can't you just listen to anything I do? Why don't you want to know anything about me? What's wrong with you? And then he just made an excuse. Oh, I didn't want the dog to run away. But I said, no, this is so much deeper than you not wanting the dog to run away. I said, this is becoming a huge problem for us. That night, when I was lying in bed, I got a vision that the guardian parents showed me. And the guardian parents are always right. But at this point, he didn't really understand that. He didn't completely 100% believe everything that I said, even though everything was right in front of his face. And I actually told him about this vision. But what they showed me was they showed me this man from the waist down, and he had these work boots on. I knew he did something with his hands. I knew he did something with construction. I didn't know where he was from. I was thinking like Montana, actually, is what I was thinking. And I said to Sean, I'm telling you that if you do not shift, then this man is coming in. I don't know to what capacity, but the guardian parents showed this man to me because they really want me to work with my divine masculine. They really want us to open these portals. And he just took it with a grain of salt. I guess maybe he thought I was threatening him. But that was probably a warning for me too, because remember, I'm not a victim here. I can look back on this now and see that if I would have stood in my power more and loved myself even more than what I love myself, like I have to unconditionally love myself and realize that I am the queen of my castle and I need to be treated like that. If I would have been there, then none of this would have had to happen because my reality would have reflected the way I feel about myself. And I get that now, but I'm telling you things in the way that I saw them at the time. So a few months after we got back from the ceremony that I had talked about in reference to the new earth coming forward, we had scheduled another get together with those two beautiful women from Awake and their husbands, and then 2 other students from Awake to do a beautiful ceremony in Sedona. And Sedona is quite magical. We got this absolutely gorgeous house in the mountains. It had an indoor pool. It was stunningly beautiful. We made our own brew. We went hiking, and once again, we had such paranormal, magical events happening all around us. I remember we went hiking, and I was microdosing on psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms. And we were hiking right before we actually made the brew for us to do ceremony together. And I was so in the moment hiking, I could feel and hear the trees. I was one with nature. Like being able to live in the moment like that is absolutely magical because that is when the world shows up for you. And I remember whenever I was in prison, I was writing a book. And in this book, my guides had told me there is a reality where you can give blood to the forest, like a sample of your blood to the forest. And the forest can conspire to make a berry based on your blood and what you need that will heal you. It can read it. Mother Earth will do that for you. And this was a fiction book that I was writing. So I put that in the book, I put that as one of the journeys in the book. But I had forgotten about that. When I was walking on the hike, I felt something push me from behind, but there was no one there. I ran into a cactus and it cut my leg and it started bleeding. And I was like, ow. I was like, why did that happen? And what pushed me? And then I heard my guide say, you're going to come across a berry that looks like it doesn't belong. You need to take that and put it in the brew. So I was walking, and then there was these like trees with these silver like branches, and there was this berry, this kind of red berry that was sticking out of the tree, and that was it. So I picked that berry, and I was able to put that in the brew because the earth, Mother Earth and Sedona, was going to give me what I needed to put in the brew for the healing to come out that would benefit us all. So we go back and we're having such an amazing time making the brew. When you make brew, the most magical things happen. Like when you're making the ayahuasca brew, what you put in it is, I mean, the brew is everything. So you have to have beautiful, positive intentions. We were going out to the store, and we told one of the girls' husbands to watch the brew, but he was doing work. He was doing work on his computer, but we were telling him, like, the brew needs tender love and care. The brew needs downloads. So when we came back, the brew hadn't went down, and it had been cooking for 2 hours. And he says, I don't know why, but this brew isn't cooking down. And then all of a sudden, two of the students start doing Om and doing like chants and doing, you know, downloads over the brew, and you could see the brew just going down right before your eyes. It was so magical. And even the gentleman who was sitting there and he was supposed to watch the brew was like, I just can't believe I saw that. That went down in 20 seconds more than it did in 2 hours. So you could see the magic around everything. And then when we started to actually take the brew and do work, one of the other beautiful ladies' husbands, he was stuck in this situation at work, and he was like, I got to get out of this. This is my intention. I've got to get through this situation at work. And if you know anything about ayahuasca, it's all about the purge. When you have stuck energy, you feel sick, you feel like you're going to throw up. So a lot of people will throw up on ayahuasca, but it's extremely cathartic. So he was stuck, and of course Willow is out in the living room, but she knows to go and get him. So she goes and she grabs his hand, and she says, you need to come out and look at the moon. And he just looks at us, and we're like, no, follow her. And he goes out, and she points to the moon. He looks at it, and then he purges everything he needs to purge. And he comes back in, and he says, that was absolutely magical. He's like, I feel so much better. He's like, I feel like I just transcended the biggest problem in my life. And then he gives my daughter a hug. And I look over all this time, I'm realizing that my husband is not part of this with me. He's once again sitting on the couch, just looking at his phone, not even seeing his own daughter do this, not seeing the brew go down. You know, he didn't see the whole or listen to the whole berry thing that happened to me. He was so outside of us that I just couldn't handle it anymore. I was extremely distraught. I felt stuck at that point. I felt like, I can't believe I got married to this man. This is not the man who is going to open up healing portals with me. So I walked over to talk to the two beautiful ladies that came with their husbands, and I said to them, I don't know how much more of this I can do. I went over to confront Sean and to say, look, why do you keep looking at your phone? Why don't you want to see what's right in front of your face? And he just kind of gives me this exasperated look. And then I looked right at the stars, and Sedona is super magical, okay? I looked right at the stars and I said, if you don't change, there's a guy that's going to come down from the stars to help me do my purpose in life. And I'll never forget that because of what's going to happen very soon. I will continue telling you about my twin flame journey in episode 16 of Upside Down Mirror.